And welcome to SportsVibe. We're going to finish up the NFL preview series. We've got the AFC North and NFC South. I'm Arnav Sarkar. I've got Kapil today. No Jitesh, unfortunately. But yeah, to finish up the NFL preview series, I'm actually in Alabama joining Kapil, so that's pretty cool. We've been on some trips. We're going to go on some more trips. A little bit of a slower day today, so I thought we'd finish up that series. Two more exciting divisions in football to get to. We've got to all the other six. I think we should start with the AFC North. A little bit intrigued about that one. They have some good teams in there. Um, Another division that's going to be pretty competitive. Even the last place team should be a pretty competitive team, let alone like at the top. So I guess we could start one by one. I guess we could start with like Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, Cincinnati is always, in the top four favorite to win the Super Bowl. And, I don't think anybody, can, I just think they're kings of the North until proven otherwise. These last two seasons, there aren't flukes. They've shown how good this team can be. They have elite coaching. They have elite players, especially on offense. And I just don't see another way in which, another team can really take, the crown from them. Although it did take a fluke victory from Pittsburgh last season to, beat them. The Ravens also beat them once on a last second field goal. Cleveland just, demolished them on Halloween last year. But, this is a new squad. And, I think, the Bengals they had to make some unfortunate business decisions, especially on the defensive side on the ball, letting both their safeties walk. They signed Orlando Brown. They're trying to move Jonah Williams over to right tackle. So either Lyle Collins or Jonah Williams, is very much on the roster bubble as of right now. But other than that, this offense, it's a top three unit in the league until proven otherwise. They have arguably a top two quarterback and arguably a top five receiver, and this may a top two wide receiver duo and clearly the best trio in the league. Um, Other than that, I'd like to see some stability at tight end for this organization. They obviously had the ability to draft tight ends in a very, very deep class this April, but chose not to. They signed Irv Smith from Minnesota, which is, underrated signing. If he can stay healthy, he's definitely, a good player. But I just, this team is just, they're coached really well. They have really, really good players who execute. And, I just don't see, them not losing the North this year. This is theirs to take.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, it's definitely theirs to take. It'll be interesting to see if they can overcome the hump. They can get over the hump and make it back to Super Bowl. They did. They beat the Chiefs. They beat the Chiefs three out of the last four times, but the Chiefs got revenge and went to the Super Bowl in the AFC Championship game. They do
Mm-hmm.
play in the regular
Yeah.
season. They also play the Bills. So some heavy AFC heavyweight fights gonna go down
Oh
this
yeah.
season.
It's a tough
Um
schedule for them. They're gonna
yeah.
have to, they're gonna have to prove that they, or belong. I mean, they already do belong in the elites, but this season, if they, if they manage to win one or both against Cincinnati and Buffalo, against Kansas City and
Yeah.
Buffalo, I mean, I don't, they're like they're unquestioned. They're elite right now, but those wins would make them unquestionably elite. And these guys are one
Right.
of the Super Bowl favorites for a big reason.
Yeah.
The only place I can see some a problem on the roster is maybe their defensive backfield after they had like Von Bell and Jesse Bates walk in free agency. Obviously, losing one safety is kind of bad, but losing both of them and then relying on some rookies, especially rookies to replace them is a tall task.
Mm.
Offensive line has also been, questionable. I mean, like they
I
have some
see.
stars, but this was a group that was absolutely manhandled by Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, and they need to, I meant Frank Pollock. I think this is kind of a make or break season for him. They've made it before with a shaky line. If they do it this year again too, I I think that he'd be out the door. But I mean, even with such a shaky line, Joe Burrow, and he's able to play really, really, really well. So I think I this team is just way too well coached. They have talent, they have depth. They're rather young, but they have the coaching and the and the mentality to make up for it.
Right, yeah. And then like another thing to watch out for is Joe Burrow's return. Obviously the
Yes.
preseason injury
Hmm.
in training camp. But it seems like he'll be good to go
Yeah.
for pretty early on in the regular season, I would think. So we'll
Hmm.
have to see about that. But
Yes.
what was it exactly? His ankle or something. I forgot.
His calf
His
injury.
calf muscle. Yeah,
He should be available for week one against Cleveland. But if he
right.
isn't, I don't think we'd see him, late earlier. I don't think we'd see him later than week two, week three at the earliest.
Yeah.
So he should
I
definitely be on the field week two or week three. Week one, maybe, maybe not. But all signs are seeming that he will be on the field for the opener. So that's a good sign. And speaking of the opener, it's against Cleveland, which
right.
is
The
a
Browns.
team that that has in. Yeah, let's shift to that. This is a team that is spent over $300 million these last two off seasons to bring in good players and compete, which they historically haven't been able to do. You know, after since their playoff victory a few years back, and almost upsetting the Chiefs, they just haven't been, at that level since then. That kind of feels like a 1 year fluke, especially going 7 and 10, 8 and 9 since then. Um, Kevin Stefanski, he's a good coach. I definitely believe in him. I mean, like, he took them to the playoffs 1 year, but with his, division of the conference evolving, rapidly and much more tougher. This is definitely he. I know. If he's not on the hot sheet after this year, he definitely should be. Because yes, because they you spend 230 million dollars to bring Deshaun Watson in. You give up 3 to 4 first and second round picks for him. Those are and I
Mm,
mean those are turning out to be top 15 picks. Those aren't that isn't that isn't that's just that's just facts. They're giving up a well of a lot for him. And they paid Dalvin Tomlinson 4 years, $52 million for him to come in and be, the game wrecker at defensive tackle. They brought in chief safety Juan Thornhill. They picked up Jedrick Will's fifth year option. They had some sneaky decent drafts these past 2 years, but I just there's no results really. I mean, like they're still in the bottom of the AFC North, and
mm,
this has to change for them. Especially for a team that this might be their Super Bowl window. I mean, like I know it's far fetched. To they're I still think they're going to be last in the AFC North this year, but this is a team that has talent. They brought in Jim Schwartz, who's a very very good defensive coordinator, who has led a top five, top three ranked defenses before. And, he has a lot of talent to work with, and he better do that. He has the ability to transform that defensive line into absolute superstars, right? I mean, like we all know Miles Garrett is elite. He top 20 in the league as a player overall easily. But you have some other players that you've spent some significant capital into drafting and just free agency. So he better find a plan to somehow get this unit into the top 10 or even the top five if he can, because that's what he's hired to do. And Philly obviously loved him. He wasn't retained under Nick Sirianni. He spent 2 years out of a coaching job. But if he has to prove that he can take this unit to a playoff game at least. I think should be the goal. I think at the most this Deshaun Watson is he was very, very, very rusty last year. I think,
mm.
everybody can agree. He
Yeah,
went 3-3. He had a very, very low quarterback rating. It was just really bad for him last year. I mean, obviously you attribute some of that to rust, but is he really comfortable within this system? And I guess that, kind of has to remain to be seen, because, I mean, like he did some okay stuff, but nothing, nothing that would, that's eye popping or nothing even close to what he did in Houston.
right.
So they brought him. They have a great supporting cast around him. They obviously traded for Elijah Moore. They signed a Marquise Goodwin in free agency. from Seattle.
Mm,
Amari Cooper and Anonymous People-Jones are still there. They drafted Cedric Tillman in the third round this year. So they have a great group of wideouts. I mean, Watson better use them. This offensive line is unquestionably a top three, top five unit in the league. So they have the talent. This team has all the talent, has
right.
a lot of talent. And I think this team is partially underrated, but their coaching, it's just, I mean, if can their coaching and their, talent get them over, the hump that they've historically been in, I think, this is the year that they're gonna have to prove that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think
Mm-hmm.
so too. They definitely have a lot of talent. They also have, David
Mm-hmm.
Njoku and as tight end, obviously
Yeah.
like Miles Garrett on defense. They've, different weapons on offense, and the defense looks pretty good. Defensive line looks pretty good. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's just up to them to be able to
I mean, you're
put
bringing a
together.
guy, you're bringing a guy who's, as defensive coordinator, whose specialty is, developing that defensive line and
Mm,
making those, and Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham,
right.
all those players that he coached in Philly, right?
Yeah.
Like he has to prove that, he can do that elsewhere too. I mean, like he did that with Ndamukong Suh in Detroit when he was head coach there. He
Mm,
did that with Marcel Darius when he was in Buffalo. As an all pro, he can do it. He just, I just think, he has to do it this time around. And, not this Cleveland, they're not going to have a first round pick this year. The next one they're going to have is, 2025. They better be good this year. Because if they're not, Kevin Stefanski is probably out the door, I think. This is
mm,
his, they brought him, they gave up a lot of money to, bring him in. They're trusting him a lot with Watson, and this entire offense to work.
right.
This defense, they upgraded at defensive coordinator. They upgraded at a lot of spots. This team is on the pathway, to the way up. They just have to get over the hump somehow this year.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it
Mm-hmm.
largely depends on how Deshaun Watson, whether he can bounce back
Yes.
to how he was before his injury and
Mm-hmm.
his suspension.
The thing is,
If he
this
can
team,
overcome that and
the,
get back to the way he was playing in Houston or even somewhere
especially
close to
that
that.
20, I mean, look at his 2020 season, right? I mean, like he led the league in passing, that's impressive,
Right.
I mean, like, I mean, even though his team went 4-12, still leading the league in passing, that was pretty impressive. He just needs to get back to that spot. And if
Right.
he does that, this team could win the AFC North. I don't see it happening, but
Mm,
definitely could.
yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of a
So,
team that with better
right.
chances, Pittsburgh, right?
Mm,
Pittsburgh, they're going to be at least 9-8. We know that.
yeah.
No losing record. So,
Right.
Mike Tomlin has done a very good job of that. But, I think the thing from a lot of Steelers fans is they want to see more. They want to see more playoff wins. They want to
Right.
see maybe one or two Super Bowl rings sometime this decade. And, they definitely have a right to do that after, Tomlin in his
Hmm.
first 5 years, took them to two Super Bowls. You know, they definitely have the right to believe that. And, Tomlin has, he did he wasted some years when a Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell were at their primes, and he's trying to make up for it right now. I mean, like what does he do? He drafts Najee Harris, he drafts Kenny Pickett, he drafts George Pickens in back-to-back drafts, and they had a pretty good draft this year too. They took a lineman, which they sorely needed. They also took the son of the Steelers legend and Joey Porter Jr. And they also got Darnell Washington, maybe 60 picks after he should have gone. This team had a good draft. Omar Khan, he did a really good job with the draft. Trading Chase Claypool was obviously a good move. They
Mm,
basically are netting an extra first rounder out of it. And yeah, I think this team has all the coaching. It has a lot of talent as well. This team also executes a lot often when it's in the clutch. Last year especially, they proved that against they think they swept the entire NFC South. They also split their season series with all the other AFC North teams, and I think that if Kenny Pickett, we saw a lot of him out of those last 5-6 games last year. I mean, like in 2 straight weeks, he put his team on the back. Led him to a game-winning drive. I think his potential is great. I just think Matt Canada needs to improve his coordinating and his play calling. I don't think he's a lot of basic play calling, and a lot of some teams are it. I mean, it's tough to beat the Steelers, but teams are starting to figure out because it's a limited playbook. If he can expand that playbook, and if he can get Kenny Pickett to superstar level, I'm sure this team could definitely compete for not just a playoff spot but for the AFC Championship as well. And they drafted George Pickens, who looks like an absolute superstar. He went to my high school,
Mm.
and he has great hands. His route running has improved a lot, and he could definitely take a massive leap to being a top 10 or top 5 receiver this year. That connection will do wonders for this offense. For the defense, they did have a down year a lot of last year with TJ Watt out. But this is a team that did beat the Bengals once. They beat the Steelers towards the end of the year, albeit with a very limited capability, quarterback in Tyler Huntley. They did beat some good teams last year, but this year's a tougher schedule, and Terrell Austin needs to prove that he's a good defensive coordinator. He's getting TJ Watt back. They obviously
Right.
drafted Joey Porter Jr. to kind of replace Cam Sutton. Minka Fitzpatrick. Obviously, they lost Terrell Edmonds, who's in Pittsburgh, who's in Philly right now.
Right. Yeah.
But I think they they did a good draft. They had a good draft. They took they went defense on day two. And I think this team could definitely make some waves here. Yeah, I think if just Kenny Pickett, he just needs to continue growing on where he was those last 6 games of last year. George Pickens, obviously he has to get 10 to 12 targets a game and come down with maybe 10 to 12 receptions a game, if we're being quite honest. And, Najee Harris, he's had 2 straight 1,000-yard seasons, even though that's, he needs to have a third 1,000-yard season, to be shown as, he might not be a top 10 running back, but he definitely is a top, top 15, top 20 guy. So he can definitely work on, that. He's great, but, he has a good line now. They brought in Isaac Seumalo. They draft Broderick Jones. They, take basically a 6th offensive lineman with Darnell Washington. Yeah, this is a good team. This is a great team. They have, some of the best coaching in the league. I just think, if their offensive and defensive coordinators can be more consistent, if if their team plays consistently, I think Mike Tomlin said to make routine plays routinely. That's his favorite Tomlinism, I believe. Yeah, this team
Mm.
can definitely, make a lot of big waves.
Yeah. They're another sneaky pick that could make some noise in the
Yeah.
AFC North for
Yeah,
sure.
I think they could finish a second or third in the AFC North this year,
Possibly. It's a competitive
depending on
division.
how
Yeah.
what goes on with Baltimore. So,
Right.
mhm.
Yeah. Speaking of Baltimore, they're
Yeah, Baltimore.
they could
This
also
is a
look pretty
team.
good
Yeah.
this season
Yeah,
too.
this is a team that, goes out, they they signed Lamar Jackson to his long-awaited, super extension,
Yeah.
5 years, 260 million. They clearly believe in him, and most players do believe in him. He had an MVP season a few years back.
Hmm.
Obviously, he hasn't played at that level since then, but he is very good when healthy. He is an MVP caliber player when he's healthy. And I agree that this team's also it's also very very well coached. What do? They go out, they sign OBJ, even if I think it was a slight overpay. They're still acquiring his services, and he has a little bit left in the tank. I think we can all agree on that. They also, what did they do? They draft Zay Flowers. They also
Right.
signed Nelson Aguilar, and
Yeah.
on defense, they're getting, David Ojabo fully healthy, their second round draft pick from last year. They also traded for Roquan Smith, signed him to his, super extension. They're still, this is a good team, especially on defense. Ravens defense has always
Yeah.
been absolutely elite, so then Mike McDonald, he showed that, after the Roquan Smith deal last year, especially, this unit could be lights out when it was needed to. And, they held Burrow to what, just 17 points in the wild card round, not counting the fumble. This is a team that is a very, very good defense. And this offense, it all depends on the healthiness of Lamar Jackson, because he has 5 first round draft picks at wide receiver to throw the ball around to. He also has an all pro caliber tight end in Mark Andrews. His offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, comes in from Georgia. and he's shown a propensity to push the ball downfield a lot more, keep the defense on his toes, have a more spread out look. I think, yeah, they did a lot of great stuff this offseason. They needed to improve, they improved where they needed to improve. And yeah, I just think that, this team can definitely go, compete for the AFC championship. It's just, in some cases, like wherever, especially when Lamar gets injured, this team is kind of, left kind of struggling a lot. But if he's healthy, this team is this is a top five, top 10 team in the league easily.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
There's
Mhm,
Yeah, their special
exactly.
teams obviously is,
That's
I think the
Kentucky.
best in the
Mhm.
I think it's the best special teams in the league.
Yeah,
We saw especially, just Jordan Stout, who's been,
drenched
great,
out.
who was
Mhm.
great as a rookie, you know. And yeah, this team could definitely compete for the AFC North crown. I have them up there as second, they're second
Yeah, I
favorite
think
to
you're
win the
second.
division. I mean, like each team in the AFC North, right? They
Mhm.
each team split their season series with their opponents, one loss, one win, which was,
Interesting.
I found that to be, quite fascinating actually.
Yeah,
So, this yeah, yeah, as I said, it just depends. I mean, like if they could very well split this year as well. But overall, I think the Bengals are going to win. Ravens are going to be next. Steelers are going to be third, and then Browns are going to be fourth. But I wouldn't be surprised to see more than one or two teams make the playoffs from this division.
yeah. I think probably the Bengals first, and then the Ravens
Yeah.
second as a wild card.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think the Browns might just miss out at third, and the Steelers fourth. But all
Mm-hmm.
14 probably finish with a record of 8-9 or better.
Oh yeah.
Maybe even 9-8 or better.
I think Cincinnati
Yeah,
would probably be I think
like
12 and
13
5
and
would be
4.
good. I think
Yeah,
yeah, 12 and
maybe.
5 would probably be best for them. Baltimore, I have them going 11 and 6 or 10 and
Yeah,
7, which is right
something
about
like
where they
that.
finished last year.
Right.
Pittsburgh, they're going to be either 10-7, 9-8.
Mhm.
That's pretty good. Obviously not a losing season, but still, that puts them squarely in playoff contention. They just
Right.
have to, keep themselves, winning, especially down the stretch. They
Yeah.
started off really bad last year, 2 and 6. If they
Mhm.
can, like, they're getting TJ Watt fully healthy, obviously, this year. So if they can continue to stay healthy this entire year, there's no reason to think that they can't be, a top team in this league year in and year out. And then Cleveland, I'm not gonna, I just want them to prove that they're actually good.
That's true. Yeah.
I just want
They
them to
didn't
prove that
last
they're
year.
as good on paper. Because I mean, if I were to put this team on paper, right, this is a great team. But I just want to see how how they show it on the field.
Exactly. They have the most to prove. Yeah. I guess with that being said, we could shift over to the NFC South.
Yeah,
And that's kind of like
yeah,
almost the
because
exact
the
opposite.
AFC
But yeah.
South, AFC, yeah, the AFC North and the NFC South matched up last year. They had that interconference, matchup.
Mm,
NFC South is kind of interesting because you have, two teams that are kind of still rebuilding, or yeah, three teams actually that are kind of still
right.
rebuilding, and then
Bucks,
you have,
Panthers,
yeah,
Falcons.
you kind of have one, I wouldn't say clear favorite, but one, well established, I could say, team. And
Right.
obviously
Yeah.
that's New Orleans. New Orleans is obviously a very, very talented team on paper. They signed Derek Carr at a at a pretty good deal too, I think, for what they signed him to.
Hmm.
I thought it was a little bit of an overpay, but to acquire his services at that price, it wasn't a bad deal. It's certainly not the best deal of the offseason, but it's a pretty good deal, I think. They also hopefully have Michael Thomas back healthy.
Right.
We just don't know how that situation is going to play out. They Rashid Shaheed as an undrafted free agent. Wow, he wowed everybody with his speed and his ability to get open. He's a very good player that should be shooting up fantasy boards this year. You also have Chris Olave, who just missed
Mm,
out on Offensive
yeah.
Rookie of the Year last year with it from his against his former teammate Garrett Wilson. But yeah, Chris
Right.
Olave was also really really good despite the quarterback situation last year. And I think they have a more consistent starter in Derek Carr, who can
Yeah.
who's also
I think that
I
too.
mean, like he's also a little bit more accurate down the field, than Andy Dalton. Also, I mean, this is a year. I mean, like he reunites with the head coach that once drafted him in Las Vegas, Dennis Allen, who's a very good defensive coordinator. He has so many names on this defense that you could go to. Cameron Jordan. You have Demario Douglas. I mean, at all three, like Tyrann Mathieu, at all three
Hmm.
levels, Paulson Adebo, Alante Taylor, at all three levels of the defense, right? This is an elite defense. A lot of defensive coordinators would love to have this defense. And what does he do? Obviously Dennis Allen, he goes out, he brings Joe Woods to Cleveland. Joe Woods from Cleveland after he gets fired there. I'm not sure how Joe Woods will do with this defense in this secondary, but this is a very, very good defense, just on paper. They just have to show it. This team is very good on paper. This team could win
Hmm.
the Super Bowl on paper. On paper, I'm
Maybe.
basing all of
Yeah.
them on paper, maybe, yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I just wanted to show it. I mean, like Dennis Allen, I know he's an elite defensive coordinator, but as head coach, he's been very underwhelming. And like he had a lot of talent last year, and he just didn't show for it. 7-10. He lost both games to the Bucks. He lost both games to the Panthers.
Mm.
Which was odd.
Right.
Which is odd and obviously unexpected. He also had, he was questionable at moments, especially last year. His play calling and whatnot. And I mean, like the second Buccaneers game in Tampa. Letting Tom Brady, score 14 points in the last two, three
Hmm.
minutes of the game and win, especially like on a last second touchdown.
Yeah.
That's kind of painful. Scoring last second touchdowns at Raymond James Stadium is, it's been painful historically. Alabama, obviously in 2017, and for New Orleans last year. But I think yeah, this New Orleans team is very very elite on paper. And they should definitely be favorites to win this division, if not by much.
Yeah, I would think so. Especially also
Mm-hmm.
Alvin Kamara coming back
Yeah,
with the
with
Saints.
Kamara, he's
Yeah.
obviously suspended 3 games, but they did a
Yeah.
good job. They brought Jamal Williams in. They drafted Kendra Miller in the third round. This is a good team. This is a great team on paper. That's about
Right.
it. Yeah, this is a great team on
We'll see.
paper.
And definitely the
Yeah,
clear, not maybe not clear favorites, but I'd say
not clear favorites,
favorites.
but
They
they
bring
definitely
in
should be favorites.
consistency. They bring in a lot of returning
Yeah.
players,
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Yeah.
Stable quarterback in Derek Carr. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, other than that,
Mm-hmm.
we got the. I guess we can go to the Atlanta Falcons. One of the
Yeah.
teams that are
Speaking of
rebuilding.
quarterback, a team with a rather unstable situation. I mean, obviously Desmond Ritter's going to be your starter this year, but doesn't mean he'll be there next year. And I think this season for the Falcons depends a lot on him. They got finally rid of all their cap space left over from Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, all those players. Trading them away. Starting anew with a new head coach and Arthur Smith, who's proven that he can get to the playoffs at a high level. He did
Mm,
it with Tennessee, obviously. Yeah, a kind of better situation. But since then, his moves on offense have been really, really good. You know, um, you know, drafting Kyle Pitts maybe at 4 was a huge blemish because he hasn't shown anywhere near that potential since. Taking Drake London last year when Garrett Wilson was available is also a big question mark for me. Also, this year taking Bijan Robinson when you quite clearly need defensive help, that's also a big question mark for me. But he's taken this team to 2 7-10 campaigns. I think he just needs to show that they can definitely compete in the NFC South. I'm not sure if
mhm.
they can compete in the conference as a whole. And that's a big question mark for me.
Right.
But
Yeah.
they went out, all that cap space is restored. They went out and they absolutely build it on defense. They signed Jesse Bates to a big deal. They bring in Ryan Nielsen from Atlanta, and they also signed David Onyemata from New Orleans. Yeah, this is a good defense on paper.
Right.
AJ Terrell obviously is a top tier cornerback if he's healthy. I just want to see more consistency and more playmaking at defense than they have had in years past. If they do that in this offense is even good, not elite, but if it's good, this team can definitely compete in the NFC South.
I
They
think
might
so.
be second or third, you know. And obviously second or third depends, on the Carolina Panthers. And
Hmm.
Carolina is a great, they assembled the staff of the offseason, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
They, Frank Reich, who's won the big game before, he brings in Deuce Staley, who's who was an elite running back, and obviously an elite running back from Philly. They also take Thomas
Yeah.
Brown, the Rams tight end coach, to be an offensive coordinator. Not play calling yet, but he'll be there down the road. Getting Ejiro Evero was a steal. And like I expected him to end up somewhere else, but I thought he might be back in Denver. But Ejiro Evero, he coordinated a top 5 defense last year, and I think that he has a lot of talent to work with on this Carolina defense. So they signed Von Bell. They haven't quite extended Brian Burns yet, which I'd like to see them do. They also but moves of the moves of the offseason for them were mainly on offense. I mean, like their
Yeah.
defense played great last season, especially after the firing of Matt Rule. But their offense is where we have to direct a lot of the attention to. They gave up a lot to draft Bryce Young. They
Hmm.
gave up their first rounder this year, their first rounder next year, DJ
Yeah.
Moore, and 2 second rounders. You better prove that. You better prove that that deal was absolutely worth it instead of just staying at 9 and hoping, praying that somebody falls down there. So they gave up a lot instead of doing that. And it's on Frank Reich to prove it. He got fired because he couldn't consistently keep a stable quarterback situation in Indianapolis. This is his kind of second chance, and he definitely has the ability to do it. I think he can definitely take this team to an NFC South title, in a year or two. Maybe not this year. I think just the Saints should be favorites to win, but he definitely has the coaching pedigree, the offensive pedigree to kind of restore this franchise to where it was under Cam Newton in the early 2010s. So yeah, I think this is a great, well-rounded staff. They brought in some big names in Adam Thielen, Hayden Hurst. They brought back Bradley Bozeman, who was a very underrated offensive lineman last year. This is a great offensive group. It's just going to hinge on the success of Bryce Young. And if if he lives up to what he's done at Alabama, this could be a very good top 10 or top 15 offense.
Yeah, no, I think so too. A lot of offseason additions, especially in the offense as well, joined Bryce Young,
Yeah.
Miles Sanders, Adam Thielen, DJ Chark,
Oh yeah, Miles
Hayden
Sanders.
Hurst.
Forgot about him. Yeah.
Yeah, from Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they have Chuba Hubbard there. So I mean, yeah,
Chuba
that's a
Hubbard.
pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a good solid
This is a good
offense,
this
solid
is a good team
defense
on
too.
paper. It might not be on paper as good as New Orleans, but this is still a good team on paper, and I
Yeah,
think we can agree. And then
definitely competitive in the South. Yeah,
speaking of a good team, not a good team on paper, Tampa Bay, who had 3 glory years under the GOAT. They
right.
obviously have to deal with the salary cap and ramifications of those 3 years of success. Tom Brady is gone, and your quarterback situation is bad. There's no way to sugarcoat it. You sign Baker Mayfield. You're just praying and hoping he's somewhat decent, or
Right.
he's been a fraction of himself since 2020. What
Mhm.
he did in 2020.
He had
If
that
he
game
can,
with
if
the
he
Rams that was just like
uh,
interesting, where he just joined
he
them
he
and then
played 2 good games with
yeah.
LA. The other 2
Mhm.
games obviously not as good,
Right.
or other 3
Yeah.
games. But if he can bring Baker back to where he was in 2020, you're not going to compete this year, but you're definitely going to be a decent team. Obviously the idea, a lot of people had this for them to draft a quarterback next year, which I still think they will.
They should.
Um,
Yeah.
they should, and I think they should. But this is a good, offense is still, it's still good
Roscoe's.
on paper.
Yeah.
I mean, like you have Kristen Wirfs, who you should probably
Right.
extend, like as in this very second,
Hmm.
like right now, this very second. You're
Yeah.
bringing back Ryan Jensen, who is a main part of why your offensive line was kind of banged up last year. At wide receiver, you have Russell Gage, who's obviously returning from that injury he suffered against Dallas. But Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, that's a good duo.
Definitely.
I mean, like Mike Evans, his ability to get 1,000 yards year in year out with no quarterback situation is absolutely very 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 impressive. And will he get 1,000 yards this year? I don't know. I just don't think so this year, Baker Mayfield, but he definitely could. They brought in Dave Canales, a great quarterback coach. He helped Geno Smith grow. And, I think if he can help Geno Smith grow, he can help Baker Mayfield grow because, as you remember, Seattle and Baker Mayfield were pretty closely linked in last offseason. And I think, but their defense too, obviously they weren't as good as they were in 2020, 2021. With Todd Bowles being head coach now. Um, he's a great defensive coordinator, but as a head coach, it's kind of subpar. But they still had a good offseason. The Jamel Dean, they obviously kept him. Carlton Davis is also still there. Antoine Winfield, who is also here. They lost Sean
Mm.
Murphy Bunting, but they're and Jason Pierre-Paul last year, too. But this defense is actually pretty good. You draft Kalijah Cansey, who I thought should have maybe gone a few picks earlier. Who's a very, very explosive defensive lineman to pair with Vita Vea, who's just a monster run stuffer.
Yeah,
You're drafting. You focused on defense this year, and you focused on defense to try and if you can't have a good offense, at least you should have a lockdown defense. And hopefully Todd Bowles can get back to where he was. Especially in the postseason. A few years back with him shutting down Mahomes, and his defense has the ability to play. Like a top five defense. I just don't know if he has the coaching to do that. If he's done it before, he should be able to do it again. There's no reason for him to. But yeah, your quarterback situation is bad. You're probably going to
mm.
draft top 10, top five next year.
Yeah, I'm feeling
If you can't
Trask is
get Caleb,
not gonna work
if you
out.
can't get Caleb Williams, obviously you're going to get either Drake May. Michael
Mm.
Penix might also be there.
Ooh,
This
yeah,
is these are you have some good quarterbacks that
good
are available in
quarterback
the
class
draft
for
next
sure.
year. Obviously Baker Mayfield, you sign him for 1 year, eight and a half million. But he's not going to be a franchise quarterback. He's just going to be a bridge. You
Right.
know, it's just going to be a rather painful year in Tampa Bay for Buccaneers football. But
Hmm.
their future, they got rid of all their salary cap stuff. They should extend Mike Evans and Tristan Wirfs like this very second.
Yeah,
Um,
they
Other
should.
than that,
Mm-mm.
this team has the a possibility to be as a good team next year or in 2 years. Right now, I just don't see you guys go. I just don't see Tampa Bay going over 6 or 7 wins. They
Mm.
want to get a top 10 draft pick, probably get a good franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay is just, you guys had your glory days, obviously, kind of have to slow down a little bit this year. And, yeah, that's about it. You know,
Mm. Yeah, I guess we could just rank the division from
Yeah,
first to
I
last.
think it's gonna be New Orleans, Carolina, Atlanta, and Tampa. I put Carolina over Atlanta because I just think they're a little bit more proven.
I think so too. Yeah.
Because I mean you have Frank Reich who's proven his prowess as an offensive coach, Ejiro Evero on the opposite side too, and Bryce Young is loads better than Desmond Ritter. So
Yeah,
I think
and they have like
I think
some offensive
and
talent that's been proven
yeah,
too.
so I think I think Carolina is gonna finish second.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna go New Orleans, Carolina, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay. So that's gonna
Mhm.
finish up the NFL preview series. It's been a lot of fun. First kind of mini series of Sports Vibe. And yeah, I mean we'll see when we come on next time. We're gonna do something similar for college football. So I'm excited for that, a little bit of college football preview as that season approaches. But in the meantime, this has been Sports Vibe. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy your week, and we will see you next time.